Okay, a long overdue update. Apologies everyone for the slowness. I should stop promising regular videos. So big changes. The first thing to be unveiled is we have a car back from the paint shop. Still on its dolly. This is the first time I've been seen on camera as well. Let me take you for a quick tour. So a quick tour of all I've done, literally all I've done since it came back is just put in the rubbers for the bonnet just to add something to it. I was going to put other bits of shiny stuff on it, but then I thought, well, I've got to lift it onto the chassis eventually. So I'm quite pleased with the job. It's I don't think technically it's the official MG colour because I couldn't find that MG colour on the swatches that I was given. I think it's a Ford colour, I think from memory, Ford, not Monza, which a lot of people have gone for. It's a slightly different, it's coming out a lot more orange on the screen. It actually is a much more fire engine red. I think that's probably just an effect of the lights above it, but very happy with it. It's a much more of a similar colour to that engine stand actually. It's not as orange as it's coming out for some reason under the fluorescence. So very happy with that. There are various pieces all over my garage and in the loft and even at my parents' house actually. That's a door, that's the right door. There's a bonnet, the boot behind that brown paper over there, and as I say, lots of other parts hidden away. The other bit of news is that there's been a new addition to the family. Not another child, although they have been getting in the way of the project. But I saw this on Gumtree, which is in Australia is our sort of equivalent of Craigslist or online classifieds. And this was just too good an opportunity to pass up. It's a Chinese hobby lathe, well, lathe and mill actually. Not a particularly advanced mill, it's just really just the turret, the head at the top. But it was very cheap. It was absolutely filthy when I went to see it, but I did see that there was some potential, and it came with this workbench, the whole bench, which was bright orange, and I've sprayed that back, and a lot of tooling as well. So this is taking me away from the MG project. However, I have already made a few things for the MG with it and turned down a few threads and things like that. So it's hopefully going to be useful for the project. It's geared, 2 different gearings, and this is maybe not as interesting for people that were here for the car, but the different metric and imperial ratios there for the cogs. Essentially you set it up and move those cogs, change them out and change the belts over to do the different thread pitches for whatever you're trying to turn down, whether it's an inside or an outside threading. So that's just a bit of steel that's in there, but I've got some aluminium and some copper as well. I made this little handle here. I actually milled out a fire piston, sent that off as a present to someone. There's a little sort of rest or tool rest there that I was making just with a bolt. And I've spoiled the surprise. There are some parts which I've sprayed up myself now for putting the engine back together. This is more of the traditional MG maroon. Again, it's not coming out the right colour on film, but I actually took apart up to the paint shop one of the engine brackets, and they matched it with this maroon paint, and it's got an additive for high temperatures. So they mixed them. I've got 3 cans of this, which is maybe 1 can too many, but I didn't want to run out, essentially, especially when they've all mixed in one batch, so everything's colour coordinated. So with that being said, I started to spray up the components. It's all masked off still, but that's the cylinder head. I found these little plugs actually from the Brakemaster cylinder rebuild kit. I thought they were quite handy for plugging up the spark plug holes. I'm going to get a new rocker cover, so I've used that, and there is a bit of overspray at the top of it, but I'm not too fussed about that because that's going to be it's old and tired, and I'll get a nice shiny new one. I think it's a pretty good match for the MG Maroon. I apologise that the garage door isn't open, it's just too windy outside, so it would ruin the sound, but if I can give you a bit of an idea of the maroon colour match. Again, also done, apologies for zooming around, you can just make out down there the oil pan. I gather that they were not always matching the block cover colour, and they're often black, but I decided to do it in the maroon. I've got enough paint. And so I've got the engine back from the engine shop. It got dipped and decked or skimmed, and so it looks a bit filthy, but it's actually not too bad. I've been over it with some wax and grease remover. I'm just starting to mask up everything. The only thing extra that they did in the rebuild is that I got them to install the Welsh plugs. This one at the back, which is the one that's difficult to get to when the back plate's on, and they've put in the cam bearings, which can be done by the sort of home hobbyist, but it's a bit of a tricky job. I think you need some special tooling as well, so I thought while it was at the shop I'll get that done. All that crud is fixed. There's no more rust that can come off that. I mean, it's spent a week in the acid tank or the chemical dip, whatever it is, so maybe a little bit more stuff to come off there with the, there's nothing that comes off with the finger. So that is ready for a lick of paint on all the other peripheral parts, the rest of the oil assembly. I'll spray up separately as I've done the timing cover or some of the bracketry. It's got to be done, and then start the rebuild. So with that in mind, for the rebuild, I'm a great believer in trying to be as prepared as possible, especially I don't want the engine really sitting out for too long before it gets put back together. So this is, I think I've shown this before, this is the gasket conversion kit. That's for the tappet covers. There's some fuel pump, water pump, sorry, gaskets in there, and the back plate ones, manifold and the rocker cover. I've got ended up with two cylinder head gaskets because one came with a kit and one I'd already been advised to buy as a slightly better brand, this pay-in type. They're both the sort of composite type. There's no asbestos or anything on these anymore. So I've got a choice of them, and then we come to the goodies over here, all laid out. As I said, I've had these for a long time, but it's the first time I've really put them out and started to see exactly what I've got. For the headlights, that's the metal plate for the heater, blank cover, there's some foam there for the boot, some rubber for I think where the windscreen goes, some foam. Got myself a new radiator top hose. Basically, hopefully, everything I'm going to need for putting everything back together, even sort of new pedals, some gaskets, some bits of felt, some badges, some that's the seal trunk one. This one must be for the body itself. So I'm hoping I'm pretty set there. The other things I bought, which are just in front of me here, is the rear seal and the timing cover seal. This one is the upgraded one. There are a couple. If you go and see, this isn't from Moss, but if you go into the Moss website, I think it was 120800 or 600 was the part code. But this has got like a sort of screw-in attachment. It's an upgraded one, apparently meant to be slightly better. The guy I spoke to said that the actual tool for putting it in is useless, but the seal is worth paying that extra different price difference. So that's all of this. The other box of goodies that I have is we have some engine assembly lube. There's a new timing chain, the new bearings, the camshaft that got machined down just so it's not as lumpy or a nicer ride because it was a racing cam. And then we've got some beautiful new pistons to go in. These are the dished ones or the domed ones. The rings are all on already, and obviously I've got new bearings and everything for that, so we are good to go. And I very much intend to try and film some of the assembly. I know it's a lot more interesting to see things being done rather than actually just the final product, but I will endeavour to do a little bit of videoing when I'm actually spraying up the block and when I'm putting the engine back together again. The few other things I've done on the chassis, this has really remained unchanged. It's really just a extra bit of storage space now, as I put some of these cork pads on where the body will sit, and then these front triangular plates. There's a sort of gasket cork material down this panel here. The body itself will bolt into these. This is some of the 31 or so ever body to chassis nuts and bolts you have to find. And then the triangular plate on the underside, I just got some spray adhesive and some foam, and just to prevent it from making any noises and rattling or any funny squeaks when we're going. That's all nicely adhered in place, just for a bit of colour, and you can just make out I've popped in the fuel tank as well and just covered with the full neck. In an earlier video, I think I talked about how to just ensure that your sender unit is calibrated, so it's installed in there now. What I did when it was out was run the ohm meter across the terminals and move the float, and just make sure that you got a change in the resistance, and that essentially you can download the graphs and the different values for full and empty. So I'm pretty happy that that's a working unit. It doesn't look that shiny in the dark, but it's been polished up a bit as well. So we are 3 years in now. This is the start of the third year of this project, and we're getting to the engine rebuild. As I say, it's slow going, but engine going in hopefully within the next, I'll say 3 months, because I'm doing things very slowly, so if I was to say in the next month it wouldn't happen. But that's the state of progress. As I say, if anyone wants any details on the paint or the codes, just flick me a little message. What I'm going to do is, with all the gaskets I've got, is I'm going to actually make a template of the brown paper to cover up these. You're really not supposed to spray where there's gasket. The mating surfaces of this is all sort of got tiny little ridges. You can't even feel, or you can just make out with your thumb, and equally at the top where it's been decked. So you don't want paint to be in there. It would just increase the chance of oil leaking. So you make a template of where the back plate is, mask that off, and then spray the rest of the block. I'm not doing it professionally with a spray gun. I'm doing it with an aerosol gun. The back plates are here, so much the same. This is the smaller front one where the timing cover goes. This is where the cam gasket would be as well. Again, you can make out, even though these have been dipped, it's not quite got rid of all the residue and some of the rustiness, so that you can make a gasket cover for all of that will remain bare metal, and all this stuff can get sprayed. And the larger back plate is in here. Again, this is where the starter motor goes, and so again, because you've got to have electrical sort of circuit, it's got to be grounded, and it's got to have a bit of bare metal against it. You would mask off this, and all this stuff would be painted. Again, I've gone through some of the forums, and there's not really any hard and fast rules of the colour you want it to be. They originally were all painted when they were in the assembled engine, so they didn't really mask off too much stuff. Everything was just slopped on, so there's people querying whether you paint the pulleys, whether you paint the gap for the V-belt. It wasn't really an answer that really sort of made me go one way or the other. I've just ended up painting this whole thing for the water pump. Obviously just the outside of the timing chain cover, but that looks a lot nicer now. It was filthy before. I just went over that with a wire brush and some thinner, some methylated spirits, and sprayed that. The inside's still bare metal. And so yeah, plodding along. But that's the crown jewel in the garage right now. I'm just keeping it under the car cover until it gets mated with the chassis, but very pleased with that. It does look a bit redder now that I'm standing back here. So it is a nice racing red, kind of fire engine red. Reliant, I think, was the colour. Rings a bell. So there we go. Anyway, I'll hopefully push another video out within the next month or so. Certainly I'll take a little bit of footage when I'm spray painting. And yeah, hope everyone's well out there, and slowly getting a few more subscribers coming in. So if there's any questions, if anyone else is doing a project like this, let me know where you're up to, and if you're ahead of me, even better, give me some hints of tips and tricks when you're going to put it all together. I'm slowly kind of working things out for myself, but there are a couple of little workarounds, specifically putting in the suspension before the engine's in. That was me having to work that out by myself, but again, the coils are so short, you don't really get compressors that would work on there, so I ended up having to use some shackle bolts and compress the whole thing down. So it's under a bit of load already, and the rubbers are actually already starting to perish a bit, or not perish, but just get squeezed a bit. So I'm looking forward to putting some weight in the front there with an engine and then a body, and just letting that sag down a bit. But that's where we're at. I'll sign off for now, and as I say, hopefully get another video out to you soon.